The Camino de Santiago is a series of historic pilgrimage trails spanning hundreds of miles across Europe, all converging at a single cathedral in Santiago, Spain. For thousands of years, pilgrims walked these trails, seeking healing and penance. And in 2025, more than 500,000 people walked the Camino. I had 3 separate conversations with pilgrims who each had a different journey to Santiago. Rich Kunz is a retired priest who's completed the Camino several times, while Romeo walked from the border of Portugal and Tui, and Peter Weinbaum walked at age 78, 490 miles from southwestern France to Santiago. Thank you for listening to the Exchange Room podcast, and I now present to you our discussions. What is the Camino de Santiago?
It's a pilgrimage path that's been in use for over 1,000 years, and in Spain, and it was started as a religious walk.
You start pretty much anywhere. There's a bunch of different ways to go. They all end up at St. James Cathedral, which is in Santiago. So it's a walk to Santiago.
The legend, which you can believe or not, is that the bones of St. James were brought to Santiago de Compostela.
When people had found out that his body was found and they brought him to this church, like the king at the time had a little church built. Then people started coming, so he made it a little bigger. Then more people started coming, and it got to be a huge thing. There's people started going there for healing or penance. Some people had to do it for penance.
It was a way for people to take years off purgatory. In the Middle Ages, it had a different focus than it has now. And interestingly enough, if someone was convicted of some crimes, rather than prison, they could make this Camino.
So they would get to the church. There's oyster shells everywhere. So they had to go there and get the shell and come back.
If you look at world religions, everyone has some sort of pilgrimage. And this is one pilgrimage that has really caught on. And people come from all the world and they walk to Santiago de Compostela and go to a pilgrim's mass. Much more than the bones of St. James, the fact that this has been a focus place, a holy place of prayer and thanksgiving for over 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And, I'm not an especially spooky kind of person, but you cannot miss the sense. There's just a different sense in that place.
When you went on this pilgrimage, where did you start?
There are, I think, 12 different named caminos that end in Santiago, and the most, I'd say, famous and crowded is the French way, or the Camino Frances. It starts in southwestern France in a town called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port.
How long did that take?
Well, it was 38 days from the day I started till the day I finished, and it's about 490 miles or 880 kilometers.
People start all over the place. I started in Porto and drove to Tui and then did a 6-day journey up.
The first one we did was the most ambitious, and it was when we were a little bit younger. We did the Norte, which starts at the very northeast tip of Spain and goes along the coast. So the mountains are on your left, the ocean's on your right. It's a little over 500 miles.
What made you decide to do it now at this age?
I had first heard about it, heard about the Camino, really heard about it in 2016, where I met some people who were familiar with it, one who had done all of it at some time. And so I started thinking about it then. And this is all about the law of inertia. I I've been thinking, I really should do something, maybe there's something different I should do with my life. And if I'm going to do this, I better do it because before I get too old, in fact, I might be too old already.
I did it more for, um I mean, the architecture is beautiful, the history is beautiful, um, the scenery was beautiful. It's not like it is over here in America. Things are much older. The buildings, their way a lot of their way of life, the vineyards, the cafes, they're not like cafes here. You could go and have a cup of coffee and sit there for 3 hours and nobody's bothering you. It's so different than here. As soon as you finish your coffee, you're out the door, you know?
My wife, she had always wanted to do this, and she uh, explained it to me. And my response was, "It sounds like a death march." She's a wonderful person, and I trust her, and I'm in love. So
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, I'll try it." And by the second day, I was hooked. I cannot say that I had a deep spiritual motivation to start, but it grew along the way.
What were the different types of places you walked through throughout the journey?
The first stage is the one that takes you over the Pyrenees, and so it's fairly steep, but it's on a paved road. And I mean, I would have to stop every so often because I didn't want to. I do have coronary artery disease, and I didn't want to have a heart event go on then. And it was raining, and I had almost no sleep for the last 2 nights, and so forth, because it goes up almost as much as you've already gone. If you've gone up 600 meters, which is 2,500 feet, and it's another 600 or so meters more of a climb before you hit the high point. And then you go down, and you go down steeply. There's a lot of places where it's, you know, boulders to climb up or down. Things can get slippery or muddy when it's raining out. There are, toward the last part, there's more trees and, go through some woodlands and so forth. And then the last part is more back into hilly country with cattle and so forth in Galicia. And you walk through cities.
We always ended up in a small city, somewhere that had places to stay. But in between was countrysides, vineyards, farms. We saw farmers out. We saw there was forests, kind of everything. We walked through all kinds of things. Um, some of them had churches along the way, or um, chapels, you'd probably call them. They're so small.
Did you stop at them?
hmm Sometimes just to rest, especially on hot days. They don't have air conditioning, but they're thick. The walls are thick. So you can go in and it's always cooler in there. So we would just sit down or look around.
As you go, some days are fine, some days are hot, or it rains constantly, and then you get to your place wherever you're going to stay at night, and your shoes don't dry for 3 days. And you never know from day to day what you're going to get into. It takes you through cities, through woods, through all sorts of things. And there are a lot of different routes that people take.
How did you feel? Was it challenging?
Oh, I mean, for me, it was very challenging. I mean, the challenges are different for everybody. Physically, it was very challenging. I I developed blisters on both feet uh, very quickly within a couple of days. And in fact, I showed photos to a podiatrist, and she said, "Those aren't blisters, those are ulcers." So I remember the phrase in my head. I'd say one step at a time, and I'd say one painful step at a time.
You feel different pain as you walk, and you learn how to manage. Like you have to get through it mentally, physically. You just keep walking.
I see a lot of people who simply are not ready physically to do this. It's a physical reality. Walking that much day after day after day after day after day after day, it's a tough thing, and it puts you in touch with your own body, and they have to be aware of that. It's not just a mystical experience. It's a very, very physical thing.
What was it like day to day?
I typically would be waking up between, I don't know, 5 and 5:30, especially if the group said, we're going to try to leave by 6 or 6:30. I started on September 12th, 2024. And, for the first few weeks, you could easily get up start walking between 6 and 6:30 and have it be light. By the time we got into October, um, it was often dark until 8 o'clock or so in the morning. So you might get out there at 7 or so, but with a headlamp and so forth. So it's basically uh, you you sleep, you walk, you eat, um, you walk some more, you eat some more, and then you repeat. Yeah, you didn't have to decide, well, what am I going to do today?
The simplicity of just get up, put my backpack on and go. No rushing to work. No, you know, running to clean something up or having to go grocery shopping there was none of that. So you literally get up and walk. It's so simple. And it makes you think, like even when I came back here, it makes you think. You run around. It's simple. You can be simple. Enjoy things like walking.
When you're on the Camino, you're leaving behind your home, first of all, and you can't take much with you. So, in a society, especially like ours, that is obsessed with possessions, you don't have those. And whatever you're doing for a living, you've left that behind. You don't have your normal routines, and you're not sure what you're going to walk into. And that involves both weather and physical conditions and other people you meet. It's really a kind of microcosm of life, if you will. And the idea is to walk day by day simply, and you're just you. You can walk next to somebody who's a multimillionaire, and you can walk next to somebody who just lost his wife, and they're just there, and you're just you. So it's a way to be open, to simplify your life, and to sort of have a goal in mind. And it's the symbolic goal because all of us are walking daily through lives. And part of the Christian hope is at the end of it, there's a wonderful gathering of people from all over who are rejoicing and suddenly uh, being blessed.
I went solo, and I just by accident, circumstance or magic fell in with a group of other people who came solo and just met at a pilgrim dinner on their first night, my second night. We started as six, and a guy Tom from Vancouver, British Columbia, had a more uh, constricted schedule, time allotment when his flight back was happening. So after about 8 or 9 days, he went off faster so that he could finish on time. And Diana, who was maybe halfway through a neurology residency as a doctor from Adelaide, Australia, she injured an ankle and wanted to stay back a couple of days. So we didn't actually see her again after the first week and a half or so. And I've had less contact with those two. The other four, Ronaldo from Sao Paulo, Brazil, Matthias from Schweinfurt, Germany, Katerina from Kiev, Ukraine, who had moved to Italy after the war started there, and Leon from Berlin, Germany. And the ages ranged from Leon was 18, had just graduated high school, I was the oldest at 78. Tom was 70. Ronaldo turned 65 during the trip, and the other three were all between 30 and 32.
What were some of the most memorable moments for you?
People were very nice on the walk. It's funny because before I went, one of my friends was telling me, "Get used to buen camino, buen camino." Every time you pass somebody or they pass you, you say buen camino, like good camino. So, that was nice. Um, Everybody seems really kind. We stopped at one point, somebody was having a little trouble, finishing the day. And interestingly enough, it was an older woman, and she must have done the hostels because they carry everything on their back. So they have their sleeping bag, their clothes, their water, their food on their back. And she was carrying it all. And it was hot, and she was just sitting in the shade. She was having a hard time. So we just gave her some of our food, made sure she was okay. We sat with her for a little while and then moved on. And it's kind of funny because it was bothering me the whole rest of the trip. Like, I hope she's okay. We were saying, I hope she's okay. It's funny, the last day we saw her. So I was like, ah, she made it. And we never talked to her again. It was nice to know she made it, regardless of whatever people go through, their goal is to get there, you know. So that was memorable for me, how kind people were.
There was a morning that we came out of Burgos, which is one of the bigger cities on the way, and I think at this time I was with Ronaldo and Leon as we were walking past this little church-like place, and there wasn't a lot of activity there. It was really hard to tell what it was. It wasn't. It didn't. I mean, it had a cross on it, so it certainly was connected in some way. But I did see somebody walk out and somebody walk in, and for some reason, I said, "Let's go over there." And walked into this place. It was a beautiful little chapel inside. Um, I don't even know how it exactly happened, but there were maybe 7 or 8 rows of pews there, and the altar in the front, and in the back was there was a short line of people who were walking up to a place where there was a woman who probably was a nun, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going on there, but for some reason I got into the little line. She kind of reached out and put her hand on my head, so my head was down a little bit, and I can't even tell you now whether she spoke. She probably spoke Spanish, but I don't know whether it was Spanish or Latin, but it was pretty clear that I was getting a blessing. And she had this tiny little medallion on a very cheap thing put over my head as a little necklace. And it was a moving experience. But I thought, what a way to spend your time, is giving out blessings. And somehow that morphed in my thinking about, maybe this isn't about discovering what I should be, what I should do in the last part of my life. Maybe it's more about how I should be. And wouldn't it be cool if people felt blessed by encountering me? And so that has stayed with me.
The level of conversations you can have with people, that's one of the wonderful things. Uh, their vulnerabilities, what they're hoping, what has driven them to this. what they're carrying with them. And one of the, especially on the Francais, apparently, people will start, they'll have a stone and it represents something that they're carrying with them. And then when you get within sight of Santiago, there's this big pile of stones, and you put your stone on there.
Mhm.
And, it's kind of symbolically dropping this thing that you've been carrying all that time. So the level of vulnerability to people, I think, is wonderful.
Did you get a sense of what motivated other people to do the Camino?
Most of the people that I met and talked with about that at all are seeking something. Nobody in my group specifically said, I'm in search of a spiritual experience, but ultimately it's about their own lives and what they're dealing with, and feeling like if I take this, do this pilgrimage, I'll get some answers to questions that I'm asking.
Some people did it just it was something to do. It's some people did it when they had something happen in their life. Like, we spoke with somebody that, recently had a breakup, and she was kinda starting a new job, so she just wanted to do something for herself.
We've run into people carrying the ashes of their loved ones. And we've run into people who are doing it because they just lost a child,
Mhm.
because their last child is just left, home, and they're figuring out what to do with the rest of their lives, or out of thanksgiving for some great healing, or maybe prayers for healing for a loved one. One of the great things to do is to meet people along the way and say, what brought you to this Camino? And the answers you get, we met people who were forced out of their homes in Ukraine when that war started. People from South America, people from all over the world do this, and you can form new relationships with them. So it's a kind of mini life, if you want to put it that way.
For many, the Camino is a religious journey going to the cathedral. Did you sense that or feel that for you?
Uh, well, here's where definitions are important. I mean, re- religious implies connection with a particular
Yeah.
faith.
Or perhaps spiritual in a more
Yeah, well,
broad
spiritual
sense.
is broader. And as I said, I think the majority of people are seeking something. So in that sense, it could be said to be spiritual. Yeah, I mean, I consider it spiritual, but then again, I consider the uh, I mean, I thought of it as I fell in love with a half a dozen people when I was there, and to me, that's as spiritual as it gets. Not as it gets, but it that in itself is a spiritual experience.
Pilgrimage is built into most religions as a spiritual exercise. And even if people don't identify it as that, that's what it is for a lot of them.
Mhm.
They would not call themselves, they would not say, "Oh, I'm an Episcopalian too." They would call themselves spiritual seekers, trying to be open, trying to find meaning in their life. There's a lot of ways to express that, but it's really what I would call a spiritual, an attempted spiritual opening to see who you are, to try to get in touch with what else is out there. Is there grace? Is there hope? Is there faith? Is there love somewhere?
Did you go all the way to Santiago?
I did. I managed to get there. It wasn't something that I had it in the back of my mind, but in order to protect myself from failure, I I never said I'm going to walk from here to there. I'm going to start. That was my intention. I'm going to start and see what happens.
What was it like when you arrived at Santiago?
It was overwhelming. Um, it was quite amazing, actually, to see how many people I didn't realize how many people did it. When you walk up, there's a huge plaza, and the the church is huge. That was overwhelming. Um, Architecture was beautiful. There were so many people there. It was interesting to see what types of people were there. There were charities there. There were, like I said, older people, younger people, just more celebrating that they made it. And then when you walk into the office, you give them your passport, they check it, and then they give you your certificate. And they had a little TV. And when we arrived, which was probably around 3 or 3:30 that day, 2,600, almost 2,700 people had already come through that day. That's how many people do this on a daily basis. Then they have a pilgrims mass. So there was a 7 o'clock at night one, which we could have made, but the line was crazy. So we went to the 7:30 in the morning uh, mass. That was amazing to me. I think it's just overwhelming that we did it. It was a sense of accomplishment, pride. I was grateful is the word.
I think the last place I stayed was only about 10 kilometers or so away from the cathedral. And, my feet were doing a little bit better by then. And I walked, just walking on one of the streets, a lot of cobblestone streets and these, curbs. And I was walking on a curb and I turned my ankle, like 2 miles from the cathedral. So, I mean, I was hobbling the last couple of miles, and my Ronaldo, Caterina, and Matthias, we had been in fairly constant touch by WhatsApp, and they were asking me, when I was going to arrive. They had gotten there 2 days earlier. I was expecting something, and I walk in and I get these three people, Ronaldo holding a sign, welcome to Santiago, King Peter. He would introduce me to. I'd often be the last one to get to wherever we were going to, whether it was a stop along the way. And so he would say he had already met people there, and he'd say, here comes Peter. He's a king. Oh, really? And they wanted to know. But anyway, it was a real heartwarming experience to have them, wait for me and meet me there.
Santiago itself is a wonderful, wonderful city that welcomes people, and you've met people on the way, so you could sit and have a celebratory meal with them. And we usually spend a couple days in Santiago once we get there, just to enjoy the city. And uh, they have great food. They have parks. They have things to explore. It's a wonderful town once you get there. It's not just the worship, but when you come into that plaza, everybody's there, and you see groups that have come together, and you see people weeping, and you see people singing, and it's it's just an incredible experience to come in there.
The mass at the cathedral is kind of legendary, and if you're fortunate, you'll go at a night where they have uh, this the swinging of the fuminero or something like that. It's a big incense thing, and there's like 4 or 5 priests who pull ropes, and the thing swings back and forth.
And it takes all these guys to swing it, and it goes, I think, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's a very impressive church. It's not huge, but it's very ornate.
The Pilgrim's Mass is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I joke, this has been going on for 1,000 years. And if you think of 500 years ago, all these sweaty pilgrims arriving and cramming into this cathedral, they needed that much incense. Just to, for obvious reasons. But that's a wonderful thing.
Once you got back home, did you feel different in any way after having had this experience?
I'm trying to keep it simple and keep the word grateful in my head, which is working, I think. I really try and appreciate what I have. Instead of finding negatives, you find positives because they're always there. So I would say that would be what I'm trying to do now.
What makes you want to go back a second time?
While I was on the Camino, I would run into people who had done it before, or, I knew there were people who'd done it multiple times. Um, and I thought, particularly when I was on the Meseta, which is a pretty long, high plains and between Burgos and Leon, where it's very desert-like, and the the road goes on forever, and there's very little shade, and I'd say, why would somebody want to do this again? Because I was, my feet were in pain and this and that, and then maybe it's something like childbirth. I always say, wait a minute, for all the excruciating pain that women go through birthing a child, why would anybody do it again? Well, not quite like that, I'm sure, um, afterwards, and at least after a bit of time, yeah, I want to go back and do it again. It's like it's just worth it. Some of the things that made me want to go the first time, which is it's a great opportunity to um, sort of take personal risks and be different than I might be at home. Uh, I will go and nobody knows me and nobody has any expectations of who I am and what I'm like and what's in character and out of character. So I feel free to and I liked the version of myself that showed up on the Camino. And yeah, I want to experience that again. I I say to myself, there's no way I'm going to have the kinds of develop the friendships that I did the first time, but I'm open to it. And in the back of my mind, I'd love to have that happen again. I've made very few friends since I left college. Really, when I say friends, real
Lifelong.
yeah. And even though I don't have a very long life left, it's still whatever it is. It's yeah. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. And I guess the third thing is the first time I went, I kind of felt, and it was difficult for me, but I felt like people were wanting to take care of me and look after me. And my family kind of stayed with me for about, I'd say, 60% of the way through. And I firmly believe they got to a point where they were confident that I could handle, I could handle it from there, and they wanted to move a little faster than I. In fact, I had already announced. I said, I don't think it would be good for me to go more than about 20 kilometers a day from here on in, and that didn't fit very well for them. So yeah, it's this time I feel like at least if I can take care of myself physically, then I might be in a position to be taking care of other people while I'm out there.
Do you recommend this for everyone?
I do. I told you I think you should do it. Um, it sounds like everyone can do it. It's not easy to do. You have to be able to take 10 days out of your life and commit to something. That's not easy to do, especially when you're working or raising a family or running whatever people are doing. People are so busy all the time. But I did learn it's something I found important, which I didn't go into it that way, but I came out that way. So I guess that changed. And I think when you're younger, it sounds silly, but you have the responsibility of working. You don't have a family yet. It only gets more complicated as you get older until I just retired. That's why I could do it. I never would have done that when I was working, probably.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me.